what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Nursing Uncharted. I'm your host, Maggie Reichard, and today we are starting up season 3 of this year, and we are closing out a 2-part series that we're doing about nurse resilience, something that is so vitally important, to retaining nurses in this profession, and yet it's not something that we really are taught how to do. We're told we need to take care of ourselves, but those end up just being pretty words a lot of the time. Many of us don't know how to get there. And it's not just doing yoga and, getting your nails done. It's about equipping yourself with the tools to deal with, long-term chronic stress and burnout. So today I'm sitting down with Karen Furr, RN for 15 years and founder of the Resilient Nurse Project 2020. Karen has a master's degree in nursing education and has worked in a myriad of different environments in and out of the hospitals. She's taught in clinical and classroom settings for both LPN and BSN programs and serves as a nurse resilience coach and consultant. In 2020, she founded the Nurse Resilient Project, whose mission is to help nurses recognize, address, and overcome burnout and compassion fatigue. She is committed to and surely has made a significant impact in the nursing profession. So Karen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. You are the perfect person to talk about this this topic. You're the jackpot. I'm so happy to have you on.
Thank you for talking about it, because it's a topic that, for years we've kind of swept under the rug or just kind of assumed is something we have to deal with and just move on. But we don't, we don't have to just accept it and be miserable in it. So,
right. And I think a lot of people are still kind of figuring that out. Where it's kind of coming to the surface.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just kind of want to, get your background a little bit. What led you into this journey, to empower other nurses and build resiliency? How did you get here?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I've been a nurse for 15 years. The first 8 or so of those were in a pediatric ICU, which, as you can imagine, was really intense. I saw a lot of, traumatic experiences, family environment. It was crazy. And I loved the adrenaline rush. I loved the kids. I enjoyed interacting with the parents. But it wasn't until I became one of them that I realized what toll that job had taken on me. So in 2014, my youngest daughter was diagnosed with brain cancer. It was complete shock. I had no forewarning. I mean, her symptoms were like 48 hours. So very mild symptoms. So it really was out of nowhere. And my first thought when her doctor told me, and this is a doctor that I had worked with in the ICU many, many times, and he looked at me and said, "Karen, your daughter has a brain tumor that's, I'm almost positive, cancerous and very aggressive." My first thought was, I have spent the last 8 years taking care of everybody else's kids and their problems. I don't have anything left to take care of my own. Mentally, physically, emotionally, I can't do it. Like, I don't have anything left to give. And that to me was just a big eye opener that, like, why is that my first thought? That I'm already spent. I've already done this. It really made me see how much this job had taken from me, in my attempt to serve others. And so in order to survive that situation, to take care of her as well as my other 2 kids and my marriage and, still be a good employee and a friend, I just really dug into researching resilience, mental toughness, tenacity. How do you face something really traumatic and overwhelming and work through it without being completely destroyed? And that became kind of in a way, it was my way of coping, was just to dig in and research and learn about that. But it also became the way that I helped other people around me through that situation, like my kids and my husband. And then, just in talking to my colleagues, everybody has their own story of trauma at some level and struggle. And so just in sharing my story and what I was learning, I began to see this huge need and desire from nurses for somebody to tell them, what is this thing that keeps me miserable in a career that I thought was going to be my life's calling? And how can I deal with it? How can I face the day-to-day struggles, whether it's at work or at home or a combination of the two, and not just be miserable all the time, and be a bitter, cranky person at the end of every day. And so it just kind of rolled into like, okay, let's do this thing. Let's find a way to share this information with nurses in a way that's really implementable, and realistic.
It's amazing hearing when you were faced with adversity, you really just walked right into it. Like, how can I build myself up to deal with this instead of, when I was thinking like, if my kid had, a brain cancer, I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm not going to work anymore. That's like how I, like walked into it. Like, how can I do all of these, I feel like that's one of the pillars in the building resilience is like the action one, how do I
decisive action? Yeah. Like what decisions can I make? Because like you said, one of your first instincts might be, well, I'm just not going to work anymore. But the reality is I still have a home and 2 other kids who need to be fed. Like to cut our income in half on a whim would have created even more strain and trauma for everyone in our family. So, it was like, how do we do this without destroying, without creating more destruction or minimizing that as much as possible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also learning is I love to learn. And so I think in a way that was my escape. And it just happened to be like, this is what I'm going to learn about. And it's served us well that I was able to turn back around and share with my family and what I was learning. But yeah, it's, sometimes, I say this a lot because this is something my dad taught me 25 years ago, that sometimes we face a situation and we can't decide if we get through it. Like we have no choice. The circumstances are outside of our control, but we can decide how we get through it. And that's where we can have control, is deciding how we're going to walk through this difficult time or season or, career that we've chosen, is how do we respond to the circumstance?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think it takes a long time to figure out, to make that mental switch and be like, I have the option I have options of how I want to go about changing this. Like if I'm in a funk, and like, you sit in that funk for a while, and then like eventually I get to this point where I'm like, okay, how do I get myself out of this? What am I going to do? What steps am I going to move? Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely.
So how do you think, what are some of the biggest roadblocks you think are in the way from nurses building up the resilience that they need to prevent burnout?
Yeah, so usually when I talk to nurses, there are 3 main answers that when I ask them, this is one of the questions I ask, what do you feel like is your biggest roadblock to building resilience? One is time, not having enough time to take care of myself or to, build resilience. The second is energy. I don't have the energy because I'm already so depleted, like I just can't even get started. And the third is lack of support, feeling like your job or the people around you don't understand or don't care or don't see the significance in focusing on building resilience. So those are really the 3 that we encounter the most when we're working with nurses: time, energy, and lack of support.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When I think of, people that are, some nurses specifically that are burned out, a lot of the times they are just, apathetic because they're like, they don't see a way out. Like nobody, even though we're all kind of feeling the same thing, I'm sure that they, we feel kind of alone, or we don't want to burden other people with our, feelings of apathy.
We're supposed to be the healers, the fixers, not the ones needing healing and fixing. That's our mindset. So it's hard for us as nurses naturally to say, I'm the one needing help now. I'm the one who needs resources. That's a really hard mindset shift for us.
Yeah. Well, and then a lot of times we're told, don't bring it to work.
Right.
Like don't bring that, whatever is going on at home, leave it at the door. And it's like,
you can't. You're one whole person, regardless of what role you're serving in that moment. You are one whole person. And, that's something that we really try to teach is a holistic approach, that there can be a balance between, the stressors and the equilibrium. And that's the more you can strengthen your resilience tools, your mindset shifts, your natural ability to act in resilience in moments of adversity, the more quickly you can return to equilibrium. Because burnout, anxiety, depression, all of those are really stemming from an imbalance of your brain trying to, figure out these stressors, the fight or flight response, these, all these negative things that are coming. Your brain is trying to sort through all that. And if you can give it enough strong, resilience tools and natural responses to bring you back to equilibrium quicker, then you're going to be able to move forward with less impact, with less negative impact on you physically, mentally, emotionally.
Right. Because we're not going to get rid of the stressor. A lot of the times we're in a high stakes, high stress environment, whether you're in the ICU or not, you're dealing with people in the worst times of their lives.
They're most vulnerable. Yeah.
So it's like the stressor really is not going to go away. It's about building the tools to deal with those things, to get you back to a point where it's not affecting you in the way that it normally was affecting.
Exactly. Yep. To minimize the impact of those stressors and increase your ability to move forward or move through them or past them.
Yeah. So what are some of the things, I'm sure a lot of people know these already, but in recognizing burnout, what are some of like the key things that we're looking for?
So one you already mentioned, that's that sense of apathy, the feeling of like, am I even making a difference anymore? Why am I even here? Does it even matter? What am I doing? That sense that like this desire or, ability to help other people, you're like, I've lost that. I don't see that anymore. Yeah. Another one is lack of energy and extreme fatigue. And this is beyond, I go home from a 12-hour shift. I'm exhausted. I sleep it off and I feel better. This is when you have 3-4 days off, you sleep and rest, and then you still feel just physically and mentally drained. That's a big red flag that you're not able to recover. And then the other is this bitterness and compassion fatigue. Like, and boy, do we see that a lot, right? This bitter response. And, there's some benefit to dark humor and the ability to laugh about hard things, but to a point. So when your response is always bitterness or, that negativity, that's always like an underlying thing. When you catch yourself saying like, that's not the kind of person I want to be. I don't want to be that person that's always angry or bitter or responds in that negative way. That's another big red flag to say, okay, there's a bigger problem here than just a bad day or a bad week. There's something underlying that is broken or damaged that we need to repair.
Yeah. It's so, just in listening to those three things, I'm like, okay, yep, everybody has that. Everybody has that. Everybody has. It's hard to remember, before COVID, what our units were like, and it wasn't all cynicism and bitterness and exhaustion and apathy, So we need to get back. There is another way that you can do nursing. You can change.
Absolutely.
You can change your, expectation of what nursing is, and your coworkers as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the Nurse Resilience Project. This is an umbrella term for all of these different, projects and events. Give us a little rundown.
So the Resilient Nurse Project is the umbrella under which we do a lot of different things, all with the goal of just giving nurses information and tools to do exactly that: recognize, address, and overcome burnout. So we do have a variety of offerings. We have events that we do throughout the year. Our biggest event we just wrapped up is our annual summit. So we have a variety of speakers that come and talk about different topics related to burnout and nurse resilience. Next year, we're going to do a live summit in Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm really excited about that. We're gearing up for doing it live. That'll be a lot of fun. Yeah. And we also do retreats. So weekend getaways where we teach in a kind of a weekend workshop platform these pillars of resilience and ways to build a personalized resilience plan. So just like you might have a workout plan or a nutrition plan, some way to proactively build these tools and ideas so that when you are faced with adversity, you already know what to do. You already know, you've already trained your subconscious to go to, these specific responses so that you don't have to figure it out in the moment when you're already knocked down. Yeah. So the retreats are really focused on building that personalized resilience plan. We have those throughout the year. And then outside of events, we have our Resilient Nurse Box, which is a monthly subscription box for nurses. It comes with a book, usually personalized, like a personal development or inspirational book. And then we have a training every month that goes along with that. And then it has some self-care items, always a writing utensil because we're nurses. We always need more of those. And then we have the book, of course, like you mentioned. Mm-hmm. The Resilient Nurse book, which is on Amazon. What am I missing? The book? Coaching, of course, the biggest one. So we have a coaching program. It's a group coaching program where you go through the masterclass together. It's a year-long program. And we spend 2 months learning each of those 6 pillars of resilience, which is the foundation of everything we teach. These 6 different areas that you can strengthen and build so that you have tools for any type of adversity that you face, any situation, any stressor, any, adversity, you have built-in responses. And so we spend the year going through that in a group setting. And then there's group coaching calls that we do to help kind of take it to a personal level. What specifically are you dealing with in your workplace, at home? Are you a mom of young kids? Are you an empty nester? We just really break it down into the specifics of what are you dealing with and how can we specifically address that for you?
Yeah. One of the things, so I read your book. Okay. I have it here, the Resilient Nurse book. If you're on YouTube, you can see I'm holding it up right now. But it's the Resilient Nurse book, A Nurse's Guide to Building Inner Strength When Healing Others is Hurting You. And we can put a description, a link in the description too. But I remember something from the book that I was like, that is so applicable. It's your S-bar for nurses.
Yes.
So everybody knows S-bar, situation, background, assessment, recommendation. But Karen flips it onto, the nurse. So like, this is the situation and, your background. And then you assess the different, I think, tools that you need to equip yourself with. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the first things we do in our coaching program is an S-bar for each nurse. So let's talk about where you are right now. Why did you become a nurse? What got you here? What's your current state of, mindset? And for some people, I see others being burnout and I don't want to be that kind of person. I'm scared of becoming that. And some people are already there and are like, help, because right now my only thought is I want to run away from nursing, but I spent way too much time and money getting into this profession to walk away from it. So we assess where you are right now and figure out what was your why that got you here into nursing. What brought you to this? What changed to make you not want to do it anymore or not love what you're doing? What tools do you currently use to cope, whether they're good or bad? It's no judgment. It's just an assessment of where are we right now? And then what can we do to build? What can we do to build on those and build a stronger resilience so that you're better prepared for whatever it is you face and that you feel good about the career that you've chosen, the balance between your career and your family and, life outside of work. And just really, like I said, build that holistic you that you are happy about, that you feel better about.
Yeah. It's all of those projects seem amazing. And the retreats too. It sounds, the power of connection right now, I think when you get together with other nurses, can be so, so magical. I went to NurseCon at Sea this past year, and just, the connection with other people was so palpable. And if you're someone who has never sought out a nurse event like outside of work, but you're burned out, you may be very surprised in how therapeutic it is, nursing summits, nurse outings, just even going to dinner with other nurses. I mean, the connection there. And it was hard during COVID, we couldn't really, we didn't have those connections. Everything was canceled or kind of frowned upon.
Right.
You didn't want to like give everybody at work COVID an outing.
It allows you to kind of step outside of your own environment and see things from a new angle. And talking to other people who are in different different companies or different units or different states, you kind of can filter out, okay, what's a problem that everybody's having that we're all globally dealing with on a bigger scale versus what's something smaller that's in my unit or in my area that maybe I could tackle first. Like, what's something I can, kind of what can I change, and what are you guys doing, to solve this problem or combat this issue? It's really nice to brainstorm and get support from people who are outside of your normal environment and are looking at things through a different lens, a different filter.
Yeah. Because a lot of times and people that have never, gone to different jobs or travel or what have you, they've been in the same spot. All they know is how that one workflow of how their unit works. And so you don't really know what's even available to you. And then when you go to these outings or conferences or, summits, you get this more universal view of what nursing looks like and what's even possible. You could be like, oh, this unit has a resilience committee on their unit,
Exactly. And you may find that what you thought was all of nursing is this problem and I'm going to have to leave nursing to escape it. You might find, oh, no, I just need to go to a different specialty to escape this thing that's a stressor to me, or I need to go to a different environment, or maybe, like you said, you're inspired by something that somebody else is doing because you really don't want to leave. You're inspired to implement something new in your own workplace that can make it a better situation. So the collaboration with people outside of your normal circle is so valuable, so impactful.
I found that with traveling when I was burned out with my first job for sure. And I was only in the job for I was only a nurse for 2.5 years. And I didn't realize, I think, how burned out I was until I left that unit and I traveled and I saw how other units functioned. Right. And I was like, oh, it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be kind of, everybody's like at each other's throats or like, the accountability. It's like accountability is good, but if it makes you feel like a horrible person because you didn't, I don't know, take a catheter out at 6 a.m. I don't know, just like things like that, there's different ways for workflow. And so you can find that like, you don't have to believe your job necessarily, but you can find other, ways that people do things by going to these others, having connections outside of your unit.
Exactly.
We'll be right back to our interview. Grab a cup of coffee, but don't go anywhere because we want to talk to you about our podcast partner, American Mobile. No matter your specialty, American Mobile has endless travel nursing opportunities. With the largest clinical team of all staffing agencies, American Mobile is ready to support you in achieving your career goals. To learn more about the benefits of American Mobile, like higher earning potential, premium health coverage, and 401k matching, make sure to visit AmericanMobile.com to speak with a recruiter. Again, visit AmericanMobile.com to discover your next travel nursing adventure. Now, back to the show. So after reading the book, I really wanted to give listeners kind of just like brush the surface of some of the 6 pillars. So let's get into it. Let's give people some resources.
Let's do it. Yeah. This is exciting. This is my favorite part, talking about this.
Awesome. So do you feel like and a couple of them, I was like, oh, 100% I'm this one. And then it's like another one. I don't know if I use this at all. So go ahead and just run through the different types of resilience that we can utilize in our workplace.
Yeah. So there are 6 pillars of resilience, and everything we teach at the Resilient Nurse Project is built from these 6 pillars. Mm-hmm. And these 6 pillars came from my research that I did in studying high performing athletes, military leaders, Navy SEALs, people who were in high stress situations. So the 6 pillars are active optimism, decisive action, intentional self-care, interpersonal support, moral compass, and relentless tenacity. And we can break those down a little bit, piece by piece, but those are the 6 that essentially what we teach is if you strengthen each one of these, then you have such a variety of tools and angles to attack a situation that no matter what the situation, your brain is going to choose the right tool. And when that tool starts to no longer be effective, you already have another one. And so you've got these 6 different forces essentially pushing you back to that equilibrium that we talked about, that sense of centeredness and feeling whole and well, that are always working together to build the best response to the situation that you're facing. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
And what we find, so another thing we do in our group coaching is one of the first things we do is assess kind of score where you are with each of these. How strong are you in each, or not strong in each of these? And then we look at, okay, what's your strongest one? Let's start there. Let's celebrate that. Let's make sure we recognize what you do that makes you strong in that area so that you're aware of it as a tool. And then let's talk about the next one. Okay, let's see, how can we build that up? How can we increase your relentless tenacity? How can we strengthen your moral compass? And so one by one, we go through each pillar and talk about where are you, on your level of ability to use that, the tools you have in that area, and what can we do to fill that gap?
Yeah. Mine is definitely interpersonal support. I think that's probably the biggest one for me, because it's like when I have a stressful day, I go to my husband, I talk it out with other nurses, I vent to other people, I just get it out, and then, hopefully they're able to receive that, that information.
So it's funny you say that, because this is one of the most interesting ones, because people often think that that's their strongest pillar, but it's really not. And here's why. Your tendency might be to go to your husband and talk to him. That is one of my tendencies. But my husband is a business professor. When I come to him and say, we had 2 kids who died today in a drowning, he does not have the tools to help me cope with that. He's not trained to deal with that. He is by now, because he's heard me talk about all this, but in general, he's not equipped to handle that type of trauma himself. So when I come and pour that onto him, I'm actually creating more trauma for him and creating this divide between us of misunderstanding, because I'm expecting something from him that he can't give me.
That's so true. My husband's not medical either. He's in marketing.
Yeah.
So he's just
my husband's great at listening, and he'll give you a hug. Oh, you need a bath. I'll hide the kids, whatever. But it took a while to figure out. But for him to be the one to help me talk through it or cope with it, that's not the best interpersonal support for me when it comes to dealing with my workload or my work stress. So that's one of the things I love to talk about with nurses is, how do we define that interpersonal support? And yes, you'll talk to your husband or your spouse, your family and friends, but for those who are not, in the medical field or not equipped or, prepared to deal with that trauma, what else can they do to support you? Can they be the ones who babysit so you can go take some time alone? Can they be the ones who just check in with you and say, hold you accountable? Like, hey, have you taken any time for yourself? How are you doing? And then identify someone who is equipped to handle and help you process that deeper trauma, and get permission from them to be the person that you pour that out on. And maybe it's another nurse who's in a totally different specialty, so faces a different type of trauma that is not going to be overwhelming for them when when I share about my pediatric experiences. My friend in a geriatric med surg is like, okay, I don't deal with that every day, so I can hear you and I can help you, process those without being personally impacted,
Yeah. Yeah, it's like they can understand on a certain level and they can have empathy for you, but also in a space where they do,
I have some distance from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, so you're saying, in finding somebody that has those tools to help you, process some of those things, I'm sure therapy is also
Absolutely. That's,
in this category.
truly, I think every nurse should go to have some type of therapy on a regular basis, simply because of the volume of trauma that we face, the volume of emotional extremes that we're exposed to, just in the periphery of dealing with other people's families and their issues and their stressors. You automatically are impacted that whether you think you are or not, just by hearing it and sensing the tension. And, so I think therapy is a beautiful thing for nurses to experience, just to be able to, on a regular basis, kind of filter out those things that they're processing and holding,
Yeah, absolutely. I've gone to therapy off and on for the past few years, and I would go for one thing and then we would be like, oh, okay, actually you're a COVID ICU nurse and we should really start to process some of that stuff.
Right.
But it really helped, because I feel like over the last 2 years, I kind of walled myself off from accessing a lot of those emotions, because you have to. You have to compartmentalize those things.
Right.
And then you never really bring them to the surface, but they will come out eventually.
Yeah.
They will come out completely inappropriately at some other time.
Yeah, and they may come out as a physical symptom that you don't make the connection to, back pain or, whatever the case may be. So
autoimmune, inflammatory
and,
disorders.
some people think therapy is, I don't have major issues, I don't need therapy, or though they're going to try to fix me, but it doesn't have to be that deep or that, dramatic. But just the experience of talking through and processing what you're exposed to allows your brain to kind of filter out the things that aren't so, impactful to you, that aren't so stressful. And your brain goes, okay, we saw that, we dealt with that, we're good. And then kind of see like, oh, this really is impacting me or causing me to, be a little bit too nervous at home or a little bit too, whatever. And it helps you kind of highlight the things that are potential issues and address them before they come out in more serious ways.
Right. Because your body, I feel like your body is so good at protecting itself, and to a point.
Right.
Like you don't know, you're not feeling like, you have to let air out of the balloon a lot of the times. Like, your body will kind of just tuck it away, and, you don't think about it unless you're like actively trying to bring things up and process things. And then like there was a couple times in therapy where I had like responses or emotions that just came up that just came out so naturally. And I was like, I wasn't even, I never expected to have that.
Right.
Yeah. Right. No, it is definitely invaluable, especially after 2 years. But even before then, I mean,
even 50 years ago, or when Florence Nightingale was, the things that she faced. No human is naturally equipped to deal with that level of trauma and extreme stress on a day-to-day basis without having a specific method of coping, And so even in the best times, even in labor and delivery, when everybody's delivering healthy, happy babies, like there are still stressors, and we need to talk about them, and we need to have a proactive plan for how to keep us, strong and keep us well in the midst of those situations, in the midst of that environment.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So that's interpersonal support.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
So active optimism, this is that like seeing the positive in everything. So choosing to see the positive versus the natural response to see the negative. Our amygdala is always scanning for threat. So we're always looking for negative subconsciously. But what we have to strengthen is that muscle of recognizing positive things, because our brain isn't naturally wired for that. And so, these are taking time to journal, like 3 things good that happened today, or what am I grateful for? Those gratitude journal type practices that just help you build that natural response to see things in a less negative light, to see not only the threats, but the supports around you as well. And it is an active tool because you have to choose. Like I said, our brains are wired to see the negative, but we have to choose to build that muscle in seeing positive as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so funny because, I came into this being like, oh, I'm interpersonal support all the way 100%. But I feel like people that know me would be like, you were the most optimistic person I've ever met. Like, why did you think that you were not the active optimism one? I do the gratitude journaling too. And, there was a while where my husband and I were writing down like 3 things that we're grateful for in each other every day. And it just like helped us point out, what things, instead of focusing on the negatives. And it definitely
makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference in the attitude of the whole group too, when you can, kind of do that together and support. I saw this positive today, or baby, I noticed something that you did that you didn't even notice yourself. And if I can vocalize it, then that gives you confidence or a little boost of, of support that you may not have been able to recognize on your own.
Yeah. And I think it's important to, and people that aren't naturally optimistic, it could maybe come off as gaslighting, I think, when you say, like, oh, like, don't focus on these negatives. That's not what we're doing. It's, this is a very high stress, stressful job and work environment. We're not gaslighting that at all. We're trying to equip you with tools to find the little pieces of positivity and optimism in your day.
Yep, exactly. And to not only feel the stress, we still recognize the negatives, we still acknowledge them and face them, but we're doing it in a way that's not harmful, in a way that's not going to build on them and multiply them. That's the difference there.
Yeah. What do you feel like what pillar for you was like the strongest? Yeah.
I think Relentless Tenacity. So,
really? That makes so much sense. Yes. For you, it makes so much sense.
I don't know. My dad just raised, my parents are both amazing, but my dad specifically just raised us with this mindset of like, whatever the heck comes along, you can overcome it. Whatever the heck you want to accomplish, you can do it. Whatever, like, there is no failure. There's, learning ways that don't work and then trying new ways. There's learning the hard way and the easier way, but there's no such thing as failure. There's just, you got to keep going and until you solve that problem or find the solution or achieve your goal. And with Relentless Tenacity, the first, the easy way of explaining it is like this try again, right? But what people often don't realize is sometimes that needs to be try something new. It's not that you just keep going and butting your head against a wall, because isn't that the definition of insanity also? Trying the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Sometimes you have to try something new, but you refuse to not try. You refuse to just give up completely.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I thought that maybe arguably that would have been the hardest one to achieve in this climate where we have access to doing so many other things within the profession and nurses are so burned out. And I was thinking when I was thinking of Relentless Tenacity, I was thinking staying in the job that you're in and working at it and, fighting in it. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It's, just maybe trying something new.
Yeah, and maybe that's, you don't want to leave nursing, but you want to leave this unit, or you want to go travel for a little bit, or maybe you want to cut down to part-time and do something else that you love, totally unrelated to nursing, to fill in that income gap. A lot of nurses find a good balance in, okay, I'm going to work 1 or 2 days a week as a nurse, and then I'm going to go work as a yoga instructor or at a bookstore or whatever, something else that fills me up that's not so draining. And you can, balance those things. And so it's not like I have to just put my head down and try in misery, but I refuse to give up or give in to this trauma or this pain point. I refuse to just accept it as is. Like, I refuse to accept that burnout is just part of nursing. I just have to have it, whatever, it's just the way it is if you're going to be a nurse. I refuse to accept that. So I'm going to figure out a new way, like think outside the box and try something different to get to the result that I want, which is loving the career that I chose of nursing.
Yeah.
And feeling like I'm making a difference without destroying myself.
Yeah. That's it's so true because, we all went into this profession. Well, most of us went into this profession because there was something attractive about nursing that wanted to keep us there. And so I've seen a lot of people, when they leave completely, then they end up, seeing like the grass isn't really greener on that side. You came into this for a reason. You wanted this, you're, missing this. It's just the fact that, whatever was going on and your coping mechanisms wasn't serving you. Right. You felt like you needed to get out of the situation completely. And then you don't feel fulfilled, doing that either.
Exactly. Yeah. If we don't address what's, the weaknesses within ourselves, then they're going to follow us wherever we go, whether it's somewhere else in nursing or some other career entirely.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense.
Because even if you say, okay, I'm going to leave nursing, and you remove those stressors, you still have the stressors of life, of being a mom or a wife or a daughter or whatever the case may be. And there's still a lot of stress there too. There's still a lot of challenges in any other career. There's going to be certain challenges that you face. Right. And so if you don't have some sort of plan for taking care of yourself and building strengthening tools, you're going to find yourself in the same position. It's going to look different, but it's going to be the same root issue. Yeah,
it's going to follow you. Whenever, because these are all tools to help strengthen your resilience in general, just not, not necessarily in nursing.
Right.
What about decisive action?
So this is the ability to make decisions in a moment of stress. So in that moment when you have a combative family member, or in that moment when your patient is crashing, or, you've got a really stressful day, you're already short-staffed, and the school calls and your child is sick. In that moment, your ability to automatically make good, strong decisions, that's decisive action. And this is where we can do continuing education. We can, learn new skills, build our skills in a practice environment outside of the stressful situation. So, if you identify, I always get really nervous when a patient codes, or who doesn't, but if you feel like I always freeze and I don't even know where to begin, or when a family member starts to get agitated, I don't know what to say. I fumble. This is where we can go to a colleague or a mentor or a manager and say, I need help learning how to manage this specific skill or tool. I need help learning how to deal with this situation. Maybe you struggle with IV placement. Then you can talk to your IV team if you have one and say, can I spend a day shadowing you guys, or just spend my lunch break one day sitting with you and learning, your top 3 tips. It's building the knowledge base. So that truly in a moment of stress, you have the knowledge that you need to make the best decision. Even if it's a risky decision, you have the confidence because you have that knowledge built that I'm making the right decision. And you are able to lead those around you who don't know what to do or are uncertain.
That's a really good point and probably one of the main reasons why new nurses are so at risk for burnout, because there's so much that they are learning and don't know. And they do have these moments of freezing. I remember when I was a new nurse, if there was one thing that I like wasn't good at, I would like wait around all day to like do that one thing or like wait, I would be doing everything else and this one thing would be kind of looming over my head. And I have recognized that now. I'm like, okay, I need to get this done because this is something that I'm not. And so then you call on other people but that's a great, like for IVs, ultrasound guided IVs right now. I'm learning, I'm ultrasound guided trained.
Awesome.
But a lot of the time, but I don't do them all the time. Our hospital is blessed with a IV team. So a lot of, if I have an IV blow and I need to grab the ultrasound, I'm like, oh God. But just
so a quick tip with the ultrasound IV, because I am, vascular access board certified.
Cool.
Is video games. Play video games.
Yes.
Because so much of ultrasound guided IV placement is hand-eye coordination, and playing video games increases your hand-eye coordination.
Okay. You're like, get off the PC, Matt. Yeah. I gotta play.
It's for work, I swear.
Yeah. But that makes a lot of sense. And I think just being able to recognize when you're in that period of freezing to be like, okay, I'm going to make a mental note. This is something that I need to look into.
And when you're in the stress of having to perform it is not the time to be trying to learn it. Right. Because your brain is already kind of not receptive to new things right then, because you're in that fight or flight mode. So if you can experience it and be exposed to it in a calm environment when your brain can absorb that information, then when you're in the stressful situation, you don't have to think about it. Your brain's already programmed, just like with the other skills that we learn. And so when you can identify those skills that cause you anxiety or stress in the environment and find a way to build that knowledge outside of the stress, then you can really increase your ability to make those decisions in the moment. And that's going to increase your confidence, and it's going to decrease the stress response because you're doing the right thing. Yeah,
right. Yeah, you just have less, you don't think about it as much, exactly. And as you get more experience as a nurse, those things kind of fall to the wayside, and you don't, you don't have that kind of build up tension and anxiety about doing.
And you're going to spend less time laying in bed at night wondering, did I do the right thing? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? Yeah. Because you've already taught yourself, you've already equipped yourself with the knowledge of this was the right thing to do, or this was the best choice given all the factors involved. This was the best choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. What about moral compass? Is that the next one?
This one is great. We had a speaker at our summit in July who talked about spiritualism in nursing care. So your moral compass is your guiding principles of values, those beliefs that you have that guide your care. And this encompasses religion, but religion is not all it is. There's a lot of, this is where we talk about ethics in nursing and the different, situations we face that sometimes we question, am I doing the right thing? Am I really serving the patient? One example where we've really spent a lot of time talking about this is with NICU nurses who'll say, like, just because we can do something doesn't mean we always should. If we have a 23-week preemie that somehow we managed to keep alive to get to the NICU, but we see, all of these, challenges that we know this patient's going to face, are we doing the right thing by throwing everything at this patient? Those type of questions, end of life care. So really with moral compass, the most important thing that I like to teach people is, number one, let's identify and really clarify your own set of principles and values and what your beliefs are. And then let's be open-minded and learn other values, other belief systems, and how you can balance them or somehow collaborate and cooperate them so that people who even believe or experience different things can work together towards a common good. And that's really where moral compass comes in, is how do you balance, if you are of a Christian faith and you have a patient who's Muslim and they're in end of life care and want to do different, practices or rituals, how do you honor their wishes and still respect your own, those sorts of things? How do you walk away from that experience feeling like I served them well as a nurse and as their advocate, but also I did not betray my own beliefs and self?
Holding space for both, like having a duty as a nurse and having empathy for patients that don't believe the same things you do, or, we're met with ethical dilemmas all the time. And sometimes we're caught in the middle of, especially with end of life. I feel like that's the most prominent one we see in the ICU, where, there's different opinions on how things should go. It could be between family members, or it could be between even like members of your team, or you just have this like sense of moral distress.
Yeah. And then sometimes it's a simpler thing of, I have this same patient who comes in every week for detox, and like, why do I continue to, should I continue to care for him if he's just going to go out and do the same thing to himself next week? Sometimes it's, this patient keeps coming in heart failure, but she won't change her diet and she still smokes. And, sometimes it's those type of situations where, like, how do I balance this frustration, or this, like, their lifestyle is different from mine. I have a drug addict who I'm caring for. And like, how do you manage this, that balance of recognizing that their lifestyle is different than your principles or your values, but they still hold value as a human. And how can I care for them without sacrificing my own beliefs, but also without, walking away with that weight of worry for that person, or, frustration for that repetitive lifestyle that I disagree with.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like if you can find a point of something that you can empathize with in a person, I think that helps.
Yeah.
I had a woman once who, I think she was ETOH withdrawal. This was years ago, but I think she had gotten in a car accident, and her daughter had passed away. It was like a long, but she had like multiple car accidents, and in those because she was drunk driving, and in multiple instances, other people had died, and it was like family members, or, and it was just really hard to have empathy, for this woman. And we had to, and I think she was on our unit for a traumatic brain injury at the point. So it's like she really emotionally was, up and down, and those situations, it was really hard. But I think, we found some point where we can empathize with her. She still lost her child. Right. There's still, you find something, some piece that you can connect with and hold on to that in those really difficult patients.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And then the last one, are we at the last one?
Yeah.
Intentional self-care.
Yeah. So this is the one that people either think is the only thing that builds resilience, or they think it's ridiculous and they completely disregard it. And this is literally like, it's all about me in this time frame. How can I serve myself? And that's really hard for nurses to do. And for everybody, it's different. For some person, it might be that regular pedicures and massages is good, is what I need to feel good about myself, or fill my cup. For some people that sounds ridiculous, and maybe it's yoga or walking in nature, but whatever it is, there has to be an intentional, is the key word, intentional plan to block off some part of your schedule on a regular basis that is about no one else but you. And it's all in service to you. Because if all we do is pour out, and we're never receiving, and we're never building ourselves back up, we will find ourselves burnt out at rock bottom, unable to move forward at some point. So that intentional self-care is really just like a commitment to yourself that I'm just as valuable as every human I take care of.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give myself the same respect and advocation that I give to them. And, you know, for a lot of people, especially moms, have a hard time with this because they're like, oh, but I have my kids, I have my husband. The best thing you can do for them is set the example of how to take care of yourself, because that's what we want our kids to do, right? Is speak up for themselves and care for themselves and say what they need. And we all know, if you've been a parent, that they are going to pay much more attention to what you do than what you say. So if you demonstrate that taking care of yourself is important, that quiet time is important, that the things that matter to you are important, they are going to adapt that same mindset that, hey, I have value. I am important. I need to take care of myself. I need to verbalize when I need, you know, quiet time or support or whatever it is. So you're still in service to others when you take care of yourself, you know, when you demonstrate that.
I'm sure that would make sense on a certain level to your kids too. You know, once you start implementing it, I'm sure they would be happy to be like, okay, this is mom's time.
Yeah. And you know, they're going to see the difference over time.
Yeah,
they're going to see that, like, oh, mom is much calmer. She's not yelling at me, or she's not, you know, mom has more, like, mommy plays with me more now. You know, when she has her Saturday morning, mommy plays with me in the afternoon. Why? Because mommy got re-energized, you know, with that quiet time. They may not be able to figure out the why, but they're going to notice those differences and see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know when we think of nurse resilience, I think this is probably the only thing that we think about, like walks but I'm not yet a mother. I'm due in November. I'm 6 months. Yeah, thanks. Can't see it on the screen, but I am getting bigger every day. But I totally see how this could be, you know, I've heard about all the mom guilt.
Right.
I've heard, you know, that you're not doing enough for your kids. And certainly when you're in the profession where you're taking care of everybody else before yourself, and then you tack on, you know, these little humans, you know, you're like that much more distanced from taking care of yourself. And,
you know, it's funny. So I have 3 kids, and the youngest, the one that had brain cancer, she just went off to college last week, actually. Yeah. So now we're empty nesters. And I am, even though I talk to people about this all the time, like, I am blown away by the amount of empty time I have now. Like, even just in my day-to-day routine of when I wake up and go to get my coffee, and like, there's so much space that I didn't realize was filled with just even conversation with my kids, or, you know, hey, can you fill out this form? Or, hey, what do you think I should do about this? And like, kids are the most wonderful thing. They're such a blessing, but they take up a lot of time that we don't realize, you know, that interaction. And so if we're not consciously aware of it, we will allow ourselves to give every bit of our time away to other people, whether it be our work, our kids, our spouse, or, you know, whatever, and leave nothing left for ourselves. Yeah. We have to be really consciously aware and intentional about reserving some space for our own needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that intention piece is what, you know, makes the whole thing, because you can find a pocket in your day and be like, oh, maybe I'll do this, you know, instead. But, you know, just setting aside, it feels good. It feels good to be like, this is what I'm going to do for myself. I sat down yesterday and I read your whole book, and I was like, I'm going to sit down and read and heal myself.
There you go.
This is, of all the things, we've been moving into our new house. And so there's just like, and I can't lift anything, you know, so I'm just like putting things away, and that's just the constant, anytime we have days off and we're just moving and constantly moving. But I was like, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to have me time. I'm going to sit on the couch with like I need like a little nook, a little reading nook in the house. That's going to be my intentional self-care nook.
I love it. So like, one example, I knew that last week we were going to be moving my youngest into her freshman dorm, my middle daughter into a new apartment. So 2 months ago, I scheduled a massage for Monday. because I knew that whether it be emotionally, mentally, or just physically, in some way or another, I was going to need some recovery, some support.
Smart.
And I totally forgot about it. And then Monday came and I had this pop-up reminder on my calendar and I was like, oh, well, that's nice.
Yes.
Here we go. So it was great because I knew that in some way, like, there's going to be some added stressors. I'm going to need some support. And so I just went ahead and planned it, and then in the moment, I didn't have to think about, do I have time for this today? Oh, well, what's the budget look like? Like, no, it's already taken care of. And all I have to do is get there, So it's just little things like that, but you have to be intentional about it, or like you said, it won't happen.
Yeah. Block off time in your, a lot of us work 12-hour shifts, but if you don't, block off time in your calendar in your day, just so that you're busy in those days. People can't, contact you during that hour and I'd like to give listeners and maybe some leaders on their unit or unit managers, whoever's listening, some tips on how to help create a culture of resilience at work. I mean, is there, in reading your book, it just made me think of all these little things that could be so easily implemented, in a committee at work, or I was like, we should make a nursing resilience committee, or like rope it in with the retention committee.
Do it.
So how can we promote resiliency within our work environments aside from just, building our own resilience?
Yeah, I think like you said, building a resilience committee, or even just saying like, hey, me and my friend Susan over here want to, bring some resources to the team. And, just start with small with, hey, can we have this bulletin board and put some resources about self-care or awareness or tips? Get a group together and say like, okay, once a month, we're going to go do dinner or go do a spa day, nails, whatever it is you want to do. Like, just start to set the example and set the environment for other people to come along. Because a lot of times it's that getting started, that's that initial, momentum that people have a hard time taking on themselves. And so if you say like, here's the space for this, then other people can kind of build in. One thing that one of our nurses, actually this is in the book, she built a little active optimism box and put it in the break room. So there was just little journals that people could decorate or do whatever they want with. And then the idea was, when you sit down in the break room, get out your little active optimism journal and just write down 3 things you're thankful for, or 3 good things you've seen so far that day. Whether it's something somebody else did, or something on the way to work, you saw a pretty sunrise, or whatever it is, And so it can be just small things to begin with. You just pick one of the pillars and say, okay, I'm going to do something to bring awareness to this in my unit.
So that journal sat in the break room all the time, and people could like flip through and read the different points of optimism and stuff. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I really like that idea. Also, I think the S-bar, for nurses, if you get really good at it or something, you can just have like a little powwow about what's going on. Just that connection, trying to build
and for leaders,
somehow.
the S-bar is a great way, like in huddle, to say, okay, here's the situation. We have, we're extra short staffed today, but here's, what we're going to do in the short term to address it, and here's what we're doing long term to deal with it. We recently had a death on the unit. Here's some extra supports today. Here's a reminder of the supports available, through the hospital or whatever the case may be. So it's the S-bar can be good for units too, to kind of, especially when they're dealing with an acute stressor of, staffing change or whatever, that leaders can kind of call it out and say, we recognize that this is happening. Here's what we're doing to address it. Here's what you guys can do to help. And then it kind of brings everybody together in dealing with that situation, and sometimes if you just acknowledge it and say like, look, I know this is something we're dealing with, that's a big first step in helping other people feel like, okay, I can talk about this too, or I'm not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's hard to, especially for, new nurses too, that are like trying to navigate like what things we talk about and what we don't, and just setting that example of acknowledging and addressing things that arise. I have a orientee right now, and we did postmortem care for the first time. I think it may have been her first or maybe second time doing postmortem care, and I was just like kind of going through the motions, and then I had to like stop and acknowledge like, okay, how are you feeling? Right. In all of this, because this is something that, we should talk about, check in. Yeah. Right. Check in about how you're feeling. Yeah. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So how can people reach you and get involved with the Nurse Resiliency Project, or if they want to, follow the events or the summits or get the subscription box, where can we find you?
Yeah, the best place is on our website, rnproject.org. Everything will always be there. On the first page there, it has all of our different umbrella services listed, so you can find which one you're looking for and go directly to it. We are on Facebook and Instagram. I am not the best social media person, so that's why the website is always like the most up to date. But yeah, rnproject.org. And if they want to go to either the subscription box or any of our events, there is a discount code that we'll put in the show notes for anybody listening. So you can get 15% off any of our box subscriptions or events too. So, and I would want to say too, if you're a nurse leader, we do have some corporate options. So if you want to bring the training to your team, or if you want your team to do a group coaching, those are options as well. And a great way for you to kind of let your staff know that you recognize this is a challenge and that, you support them in getting the resources they need.
Amazing. Oh, I really hope that. I was like, I want to check in with my unit.
Yeah. How cool would it be if your unit went through together and did coaching, and through that kind of said, okay, I'm struggling with this, you're struggling with that. How can we implement some things on our unit that can make a difference, or take this back to our hospital, and ask them to implement some of these things. One of the things I've seen is when we can teach resilience tools in orientation, it drastically increases retention rates. And we all know, for the nurse leaders listening, retention equals dollars, right? It improves our bottom line, which unfortunately or fortunately, we have to think about whether we want to or not. So if we can improve retention, it's going to speak to our higher level, C-level managers and leaders of the hospital. And it's also going to help the people in our unit feel like I have a team I can count on. I have a team I enjoy working with every day. And I know they're going to be there day after day, and we're going to have enough,
Yeah, that's amazing. It's it's something that everybody needs, and you would think would be implemented on so easily, on units. Yeah. Well, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Absolutely. I'm in. Let's go.
Let's do it. You come to my unit first.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. This was just packed with, good meat of information that I think a lot of nurses can use. And thank you so much for all your work in retaining nurses into the profession.
Absolutely. My mom was a nurse for 45 years, and her best friend is a nurse. So I've been surrounded by nurses all my life, and they're some of the most wonderful, supportive people in my life. And, now to be a nurse myself and have my best friends and support systems be nurses, this is such an incredible profession. It's such an incredible group of people that deserve to be taken care of. And so it's time for us to just speak up and advocate for ourselves and say, we need this as much as our patients need all the things they need. We need something too. And it's doable,
Yeah, absolutely. All right,
awesome.
Karen. Well, thank you so much. I will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye. That brings us to the end of the show. Thanks for tuning in to Nursing Uncharted. To learn more about today's episode, make sure to explore the show notes at americanmobile.com/nursinguncharted. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a guest. If you're a nurse interested in traveling, visit AmericanMobile.com to explore the largest database of travel nursing jobs in the industry and the amazing benefits that American Mobile has to offer. Also, a special thanks to producer Jonathan Carey, assistant producers Katie Schraubin and Sam McKay, and Aidan Dykes for the music and editing. Until next time, take care of yourself.